Hi there. Oh. Okay, hopefully you can see me now. I've not got a brilliant signal strength today, so if this broadcast cuts out, I apologise. Anyway, today's subjects are the so-called ageing population, and also a few other subjects I've thought about during the morning while I was waiting to do this broadcast. Okay, let's take the ageing population myth first of all. This is something that we hear a lot on the news. You'll hear a lot from the BBC particularly, talking about the increasing problem of the ageing population, as if the ageing population is something new. Now, it's not the case, is it, that years ago, in the old days, people didn't age, because they did age. Ageing isn't a new thing. It's not as if people just died when they got to the end of their working lives, although that was often the way the government hoped it would go, so they didn't have to pay out so much in pensions. However, the wonders of modern medicine mean that people are living longer and living healthier lives. Now, that doesn't make them a burden on society, as the politicians would have us believe. The politicians don't like you living long because they feel that they then have to find money for your pension. Now, those of you who are already pensioners or coming up to pension age might have thought, and quite understandably thought, that all of the money that you were putting in through your national insurance contributions over maybe 40, 50 years of your life was going into some pot of money that was then going to be used to keep you in your old age. Well, you'd be completely and utterly wrong. That is not the way it works at all. The money that you pay into your national insurance is instantly destroyed as soon as the government gets it. Like all other taxation, as soon as the money is taken in terms of your contributions and taxes and national insurance, that money is destroyed. Once it has been added up to see how much of it there actually was that year, they add it all up, then they destroy it and borrow what they need for the next year based on how much less they took than they should have taken. In other words, they calculate the deficit, they work out how much taxation came in and how much they spent and what the difference was, and then they borrow the bit that they didn't have enough to pay the last time. And this is how Tory and Labour governments for the last, 5 decades have run the British economy. So your taxes, your national insurance do not go into a pension fund. The government pension pot is not like a private pension. A private pension, your money is invested in a fund, which then makes interest over many, many years, and at the end of its life, it should have expanded through compound interest and extra contributions to provide you with a good pension. The state pension doesn't work that way. So the reason why there is a problem with this so-called ageing population is not the fact that people are aging or living longer or that there are more of them, but the fact that the government didn't budget for it and never had a pension pot for them in the first place. So those of you who are on pensions at the moment, the state pension is what, £140, isn't it? Something like that a week. Now, if you're a pensioner who happens to be an ex-politician, then you could be getting more than twice that per day just to show up at the House of Lords and fall asleep. So that goes to show you, there's money there for some of us, but not for others. So the myth is that somehow the fact that there are more older people is a drain on the economy. Well, is that true? No, it's not true, because if you think about it, people who are already pensioners have paid taxes, and also they pay taxes on their additional income. So if you have a private pension, for example, you'll pay tax on what that makes. So if you're taking income from a private pension as well as your normal state pension, that's taxable income. They tax you twice. Not only that, but you're using your money in the local economy to support shops and businesses locally. So your money is being invested in other places and keeping the internal economy buoyant. You have a lot of spending power. Some wealthy retired people have got plenty of money. They spend it on holidays, on cars, on home improvements. They're contributing to the economy, not leeching off it. There are a number of poorer pensioners who struggle to get by on the state pension, and it's not their fault. They maybe had jobs where they didn't have the opportunities or the education to have a high-paid job with a high-paying private pension. But the point is that the pension in the UK, £140 a week, is the lowest in the entire European Union. Germany has over £500 a week for a German pensioner. That's the state pension, for God's sake. It's not even a private pension. So why is Britain doing so badly at this? because they are stingy, because they've mismanaged the entire economy, and because they constantly borrow money to run the country. That brings me to the next subject, which is Scotland. The British media today have published the findings of a poll. I'm trying to remember whether it's a BBC poll. I think it's a YouGov poll anyway. YouGov is basically a British government poll, and it shows that optimism for the future is highest in Scotland. The rest of the UK is very pessimistic, but in Scotland we are optimistic about the future. We believe our best years still lie ahead. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Well, the answer, I think, must be as plain to you as it is to me. The reason is that Scotland is the only place in the United Kingdom which can escape from Brexit and have a better future for itself, simply by having a vote to become independent. No other part of the United Kingdom has the ability to break free from Brexit in the same way. So the writing is on the wall for the union as it stands at the moment between England and Scotland. Scotland is certain now, I think, to leave the United Kingdom because it doesn't have a better option now than independence. There's either Brexit, moderately hard Brexit, or completely hard Brexit with no deal. But all three of those options are worse than independence by a long, long way. So the reason that we're more optimistic is because we know that all we have to do is hold one more plebiscite and have a yes vote, and we can leave the UK forever and let it wallow in all of its debt and misery. The British government created the situation itself, not the English people, the British government. And I'm not talking just about the Tories. The Labour Party did the same thing. And I was hearing today about the problems being caused by Gordon Brown's massive expansion of the gambling industry in the UK is now causing misery all over the country, with fixed odds betting machines ruining people's lives. And now they're having to take these betting machines and remove the £100 maximum and make it £2 maximum. The betting shops are talking about shutting down, throwing thousands of people onto the dole. It's a mess. The British state is a mess. It has based its entire economy on gambling, on money laundering, and on borrowing cheap money. Scotland, we hear a lot about how we will have a percentage share of the so-called British deficit. Now, the deficit is the difference between what it costs to run the country and how much taxation comes in. The deficit is how much money we have to borrow in order to make ends meet. And the fact is that we are being told that we have to pay down a share of that deficit, that borrowing that the British state has done in the past. Now, the British state took out the money because of its mismanagement. Scotland, when it's independent, as a new country, has no debt. It has no historic debt, has no deficit either. It just has what it's got, which are its natural resources, whatever money it has in taxation, and it has a clean sheet. So the reason that we're optimistic is because we know that we don't have a deficit to start with, that we will have plenty of money. We've already seen that the worst case scenario in the recent growth report, which is the worst case scenario for independence that there is, which would be to run Scotland as though the Tories were running it, paying down a deficit which we never took out, and imposing austerity on people in the first 10 years of independence. Now, we know that we wouldn't actually do it that way. And the reason we feel so optimistic about independence is because we know that that was the worst case scenario. We also know that the best case scenario is that we will make it easily, even without our oil revenues. And not only will we make it easily, but we will have massive oil revenues, as the oil index is now estimated to top out at over $100 a barrel by the end of the summer. We have plentiful gas. New gas fields are opened up now west of Shetland. So there is the opportunity now for Scotland to also produce more gas, which in the past it couldn't do. Now it can. So there's good reason for us to be optimistic. Very good reasons. And I feel sorry for those people who live south of the border at the moment, because they're going to inherit a mess from the Tories. The Tories are supposed to be coming up with what is the the absolute worst case scenario backstop of what they will do if they have a no deal hard exit. In other words, if they leave the European Union with absolutely no trade agreement at all, what will they do in Ireland? They can't even agree on that. They don't even know what they will do with the Irish border if there is no agreement to trade with the EU. The truth of the matter is that there must be a border in Northern Ireland if there's no deal, because there cannot be any other situation. No matter what the DUP says, and the DUP says contrary things about everything, no matter what they say, if there's no deal with Europe, there must be a border, because Europe will be closed to UK imports. There will be taxes, there will be bridges, there will be truck stops, there will be checkpoints, because there will have to be. And even if they manage to somehow keep Northern Ireland in parallel using European rules and regulations and having this equivalence, that means that Northern Ireland is in an effective union with the EU. It will be the only part of the United Kingdom which will have a frictionless border with Europe, and that is not a tenable position, because then Scotland should need to have that same arrangement, England should have the same arrangement, and Wales should have the same arrangement, and none of those things is going to happen. Brexit does not compute. It doesn't matter what they dress it up as, it doesn't matter how they try to paint it or spin it. It's a disaster. And it's a disaster on hundreds and thousands of different levels. The car industry is already being affected. The Association of Road Transport, I can't remember the actual name of that organisation, but the Road Transport Association are saying that nothing the British government has said to them has changed their mind that Brexit is a catastrophe for the trucking industry all over the UK. So the writing's on the wall. These are very scary times. We're seeing David Davis today not resigning over the fact, so far anyway, over the fact that there is no agreement about what they're going to do about Ireland. And we have just under 2 weeks before the European Union's deadline for Britain to come up with the solutions to these preliminary problems. That's the Irish border, the European citizens' rights. I can't remember what the third one was. But we haven't even made it for a single one of these yet to the European Union's satisfaction. And I don't believe that any deal is possible. The Europeans have said repeatedly that what the UK is asking for is not possible. They cannot have the benefits of being in the Union without being members. So there you go. It's all there. It's laid out in front of us in black and white. The reason that Nicola Sturgeon was talking to Michelle Barnier a few days ago is because she knows that this is coming, and Scotland needs to know its position in Europe for when we become independent. We need some assurances from Barnier that Scotland's position in Europe will be at least held in abeyance, that we'll be allowed to remain as European citizens for the time being until Scotland is on its feet again and can make a decision about how it wants to relate to Europe. So, the ageing population is a myth. Don't believe a word of it. The only reason that there's a problem with pensions is nothing to do with the pensioners. The pensioners have paid their money in. They're entitled to their pensions. They're not a drain on society. Quite the reverse, in fact. They create jobs all over the country for people. And they create jobs in home improvements, gardening, the healthcare industry, the automotive industry. They spend their money, and they spend it on things in the UK. So far from being economically inactive, most pensioners are actually contributing to the economy all of the time they're alive. So don't believe a single word that the Tories tell you, or the British press, that pensioners are in some cases a burden on society. Very far from it. There will always be some pensioners who need more medical attention and more help to treat long-term illnesses and conditions. But the point is that they are supporting the jobs of medical professions. And the medical professionals in the health service do a job, they earn money, they pay taxes, they spend their money in the local economy, everybody benefits. So even if you are an old person and you're not able to contribute a lot in terms of money to society, you're still contributing. Don't forget that everybody in society, while they're alive, is contributing to that society. And this mythology about the aging population needs to be stopped. It needs to be just argued against constantly. Anyway, that's all I have to say today, but remember, there's a lot of reasons to feel optimistic now. Scotland is the only part of the UK that can escape Brexit, and Brexit is going to be hard, and it's going to be nasty, and it's going to be unpleasant. And the only real option for us now to be safe, for our economy to be saved, our jobs to be saved, is for us to leave the UK before it dies completely. You've seen what's happened to the high streets today, another big store closing in the UK, and this is because of people taking vast profits in rents and rates from businesses on the high street. They've been doing it for years and getting away with it. Well, the bubble's burst now, and those retailers can't afford it anymore. So there'll be a few property investors who will be crying into their martinis this afternoon at the thought of House of Fraser basically cutting its shop levels in half overnight. I'm afraid 6,000 jobs and more are going to go for this. And this is part of the thousands and thousands of jobs which are being cut as we speak, as people gear up for both Brexit plus recession plus the end of high street shopping. So there's a lot of things happening at the one time. The Tories cannot keep on top of it. They're a shambles, they're mired in Brexit, they don't know what they're doing. And there is only one escape, and that is to vote yes as soon as we're offered the chance to do it. Whether it's a referendum or an election or some other plebiscite of some kind, doesn't matter. If we're given the opportunity to vote to leave the UK, we need to take it. Take it before things get any worse. Bye bye for now.